Next up is Cindy Chastain. She's a creative director at RGA, which I believe just received Agency of the Millennium, something of that nature. Decade. And she currently works there to combine user-centered design, storytelling, and collaborations to change the way marketing folk and advertisers approach customer experiences. She's done it also with a number of top brands. And what she's come to share with us is the challenge of planning and delivering experiences across multiple touchpoints, across multiple devices, and especially doing it when organizations aren't necessarily prepared or they're resisting actually doing it. So, hi.
Hi.
Tell us about it.
All right. Hello. Let me get set up here. So, quick question. How many of you here are actually from an agency or work in the context of an agency? Just a few. And then how many of you work in the context of an organization, a company that's actually building products? Or another company, just a company, and they have internal UX teams? Okay, oh good, interesting. Not quite the mix I was expecting. About a year ago, our client is a major telecom company, came to us and said that they wanted us to come up with a recommendation for site personalization. And we've been talking about personalization for a long time, and so we took, step back and said, okay, well, what does this mean? And they wanted to, the goal was to sort of, as we would say, shorten the distance between what a customer needs to know to do what they need to do what they want to be able to do. And when we started to look at the strategy, we came up with a kind of personalization that was about real-time conversation with the customer that would carry across multiple channels. And before we knew it, we realized that we had an opportunity to look at all of the touch points from our client, which is very rare because they just wanted to start from the site. So we started modeling the ecosystem. We do this a lot in an agency world. I don't know, have any of you done this, like looked at your ecosystems? But this is a way to do it in a way that makes sense to the clients, it makes sense to how we work. And so there are 3 bands of awareness. We have that aspect we deal with, the engagement, when a customer actually starts to get involved and interact with your products or your channels. And then the inner circle is the area of utility and play, where there's a lot of repeat behaviors and interactions that build over time. And so we were just starting with the consumer sites. And before we knew it, we realized we have an opportunity to basically touch all of these things. And we felt that in our position as an agency that we could do it, we had an advantage because we could see all of this in a way that our client couldn't. And looking at it this way, we saw an even bigger challenge. It was like, not just how we can make connections across these channels, but how can we actually transform the experience of an entire brand, how the customer relationship completely change by rethinking of how all of these pieces can fit together. And that's the kind of thing you really have to sell into a client. They just wanted this little small thing, and suddenly we're saying it's this big. And in fact, we're still selling it in. But for this talk, I want to discuss some of the insights that have played into our arguments and our attempts to kind of like build this plan with the client, and the primary challenges that we've learned along the way. It's been about 9 or 10 months or so since we started this. And just to give you a little context, inside of RGA, we're usually embedded in accounts, and so it's not just from project to project, and our account alone has 100 people on it working for our client. And so it's a large team of designers, a large team of developers, and also advertisers, and it's a very, very integrated sort of world. So we felt like we were a small sort of company working very closely with our client. So some of the insights. What I've found, and I don't know if you've experienced the same thing, but working with a lot of clients, I've seen that clients, businesses are really starting to acknowledge the value of good customer experience. We started a place where that is no longer the thing that we have to sell in, right? Because we're seeing it all around them. They're seeing that smart companies know that customers place a high premium on the experiential qualities of a product, how it's used, how it fits into their lives, what it communicates to others, and how the company responds to them in the process. And those things go above the familiar criteria like price and features. And this past January, the Temkin Group did a survey of over 170 large organizations, and 8 out of 10 participants who are UX professionals thought that customer experience will be more important in 2011 than it was in 2010. Social media, the web, and customer-centric culture are set to receive the most amount of attention, and this is amongst the executives of big companies. And so this is actually really a great thing. We're kind of getting here already. But what I find really interesting is that it actually goes beyond this experience. Big things are happening, like the definition of a product is changing. Products, I think, are being redefined. They're moving away from standalone products or single lines of businesses to platforms ranging from something like the Flip, which comes with the software that allows you to easily produce and to share your videos, and they're constantly providing new ways to be able to add. There's also the Nike. This is something that RGA worked on. It started out as a little chip in your shoe that allowed you to log and track your running, that became a tool for blogging and sharing this with other friends. And to another way of looking at it, which is a brand as a network. This I find very interesting because it's not just the product, it's not just the system around a single activity. But in the case of Barnes & Noble, there are many, many ways to sort of interact with and to engage with the brand outside of its core service. And there are book clubs, there are special blogs, they've now gotten into product development. And in this way, I think they've begun to actually redefine what it means to be in this category. We're also living in a network world. Truly, there's a lot of people creating a lot of content on a network. People are sending most of their communications around a network. People are getting more and more entertainment through the network. In fact, last June, saw statistics that Hulu, for example, had 24 million viewers in June, which is a figure greater than the subscriber base of Comcast or DirecTV. That's pretty huge. And so we're telling our clients these things, and companies who adapt to benefit from the network world. As the use of people increases, brands are struggling to adapt. And if they were, they could see that the social aspect is more than a communications channel, but it becomes a way for the whole brand relationship to be completely redefined. And also, because of all these shifts, customer values and needs have changed. I think it's really true that people are not looking for the best product or the best price anymore, but they're looking for this well-rounded value proposition. They're looking for the best network of values, if you will. They're also looking for new ways, discovering new ways, rather, of purchasing and getting services in increasingly personal and relevant ways. On demand, anytime is the new normal. And people want to do things when and where and how they like it. This is also a behavior that we're noticing. And so that is to say that fewer and fewer customers are centering their activities around a single touch point. And it's becoming increasingly important that companies are able to respond to these kinds of things. And some of them are. Some are really, really doing this well. To keep pace with this change, smart companies have moved from selling a product to selling a service around the product that is also socially connected. I've been calling this idea of moving from core product to service ecosystem. The product is an integral part of the service, but the overall value and appeal is about what the service provides. For example, Weight Watchers. This is such a great example. I love this. And this is actually outdated since it's changed recently. But what they've done is they've taken what used to be an offline activity, being able to track your dieting, gain points, and get support from fellow dieters, to an online system that allows you to easily track and share that data, to actual products which feed into that system, to mobile devices that you can carry and use to keep you on track when you're having those moments of doubt, to social activities of support, like the lolcats ad up there that they put out and use to form this big network. And to me, this is a service ecosystem. It's all about what kind of things can we do around our core activity of selling these products, special meals, et cetera, of helping people diet. O'Reilly is another great example. I think it's fantastic because they're no longer just selling books. They actually, started this a long time ago. They were running conferences. They started to very early on take chunks of the content and put it out into social circuits. They have the one down at the bottom in the middle there is an iPhone app that for developers that gives them code on how to deal with cookies. And then they expanded into this idea of making and thinking and creating into the real world with Make magazine, which is a way to sort of like how do you what's the DIY aspect of this? So it's moving away from their core proposition, which is spreading technology, spreading the knowledge of technology innovators to so many different places, and it's become this very, very rich way of looking at one's business. And the ecosystem is an important idea because it's the interdependencies of all of these organic systems that supports the service that determines the success. And the key value proposition shifts, as I said, from that core product or service. So when we looked at this, we said, well, wonder if we could do something like this with our client. They want personalization at core is about harnessing the data, harnessing a lot of the data that we know about customers, that we learn about customers, and creating experiences. But it goes well beyond that. What if we were to create, this is a new view of the ecosystem, something that was really, really integrated where imagine from our research, we learned, for example, that customers just weren't finding what they needed to make a decision as to like, what provider should I go with? They didn't trust them. They weren't getting the details that they needed. And that's just one aspect of it, but how wonderful would it be if you were a customer going to the site to do some research, and we not only were able to show you that information that you told us you needed to help you make a decision, but then if you decided you weren't ready to order online, you could go to the call center, pick up the phone and call, and then they would have some sort of information about you actually having been online, so you don't have to start over the whole process again, and be able to pick up where you left off and be ready to make that final purchase. And this goes into a lot of things. Social would be, a big piece of it. So this was big, big thinking for us, but the big question was, of course, how do we get there? This was all completely new. And with new models, obviously come new challenges. So working on this account has given me insight on how to approach this stuff, but I have to say that we're still in the midst. I can't come to you with big conclusions, and this is what we've learned, but I can tell you that there are some big challenges that you could prepare for if you get into a place where you want to start thinking about these things. Because I think what this is showing is that there are real opportunities for UX professionals to step forward with a way of strategically looking at businesses and all of the experiences and what they mean to that business in a wholly new way. And I think there's huge opportunity for leadership here. And that's what's really exciting. So the challenges are things that you've probably heard of, creating and maintaining consistent experience. And I know there have been several people who have talked about that, which is why I put the way of conducting business. We were using the ecosystem as a foundation for all of these connected cross-channel experiences. It wasn't just looking at two specific channels at a time and but how do we look at it as a holistic piece? And I think that it was more than just brand and information and consistency, but how are things experienced in the way that the business might want to create the service. And so the important thing to know is from a customer's point of view, all of the products are virtually the same. Online experiences, offline experiences, the services. To them, it's just one brand. And we all know that Apple does a really good job with this. They don't make meaningful distinctions among these elements. So one of the first things we did is very, very small thing. We said, well, what we could do as a tiny, tiny step across channels is to make sure that the offers that customer received were the same, because it was completely broken. You would see something in an ad, you would see something on one area of the site, and click somewhere else, and it would just change. And not only that, it wouldn't be the right price for wherever you lived. And so that was a problem too. And so hence there was a lot of drop off. The minute we fixed this, we made it transparent because we wanted this personalization to also not be anything sort of creepy, like we know where you live or we're trying to get this information, but we want you to tell us what you want. You want us to tell us where you live, and we're going to tell you why we're showing things. And the minute we made this change so that the offers were very consistent, something very, very small, the sales went up by like 10%. It was a very, very immediate response. And so for this reason, one of the things we learned is that consistency is no longer a nice to have, it's essential. And I would challenge you to think of all of the things that you have within your reach, what touch points and channels you have, what's not working there, what's broken. So this is where we started. But the thing is, that one case was something that was very easy to agree upon. Not a lot of people had a problem with that. That was very clear. Fixing the offer problem was not the same, however, as looking at personalization in a much deeper way. Channel optimization, first issue is basically a primary precept of business. So when you're trying to create relevant and consistent experience, it's easy for competing objectives in different channels to get in the way. For example, in our personalization strategy, we were very emphatic about the need to make this a service for the customer and provide what they needed. However, we had other people in other channels who were just about, okay, let's put the right message at the right time to the right person. And there is a place for that, but at the same time, we felt that there was actually more value in looking at it this way, but we had, therefore, to create an integrated strategy. And not only that, but an integrated strategy that, and this is sort of an example of how we looked at it, where, yes, we have marketing needs, we also have customer experience. Where do they overlap? They overlap where it should be relevant, the experience, where it should be engaging. And we have on one side a persuasive sort of aspect of this project, and then there's the guided path. And what worked is to look at this in reference to the entire ecosystem, because it got people out of their silos, and it got them thinking about this connected journey in a way that they hadn't before, because they were always used to thinking about, how do I optimize my one piece of this business? And in fact, our client literally, we would be owners of specific pages on a site, not only in addition to specific channels. So what are some things you can do? This is a takeaway. I don't want to go through all of these things right now, but if you're thinking that this is some opportunity, or there is an opportunity in your company for something like this, this is what I would recommend. Start talking about the new definition of products now. Audit the ecosystem and build a case around what's not working, and use it to extend real value. You've done a lot of research. Keep doing your research, but learn about customer experiences in other places, and then learn about the objectives of the people who work in those channels. Create models and integrate them into presentations, and then build an integrated strategy, I said, that can be looked against experience objectives. The second challenge is creating continuity across channels. This is something very different than mere consistency, and it was very, very important to what we were doing in personalization. It was about system awareness. It was about real-time synchronization. It's also about giving people the right entrances and exits. Doing a little research, we learned that more than 70% of customers reported that they go to the web first before some other channel, before they to research before they buy. This is actually what's showing in the middle. The medium blue tone is showing that this audience is actually growing. And with our client, one of their objectives was, well, we need to deflect calls, reduce people to go. We want to push everything online. But the reality is that's not the way people are behaving. In fact, many people are used to working or moving through multiple channels before they're ready to make a decision. And so how do you provide for that? What kinds of things do you need to do? And so it's that continuity, the continuity of having system awareness and synchronization between those two that makes that work. Because if it's not, that's when people get really frustrated, and that's the thing that hurts the business. And what I find interesting about this is I think people have been talking about this for a very long time, but I've seen in the stuff that I've read and the things that I've been trying to research, very little evidence that people are putting a lot of time into thinking about these problems. I think part of the reason is because it's really hard. And it feels very complex, and the business cases around doing it are not quite there yet, but I think we have all of the evidence that it's important. For example, we were doing something, another piece of the business was about this upgrade and renewal experience. We posed it as a service for the customer. You know, when you're trying to, your service price goes up, let's say you have a cable bill and suddenly you realize you're out of contract, but you wish you could change, can you get a better deal? And you think you might go online and try to find it, and if you do, it's good luck, because you're probably going to have a hard time doing it. So what we were thinking is, how can we make this easier for customers? How could we show them how to optimize their service and actually get rid of things that they're not using if they're not using it, not only upsell them. So there's this experience with many, many different touch points. And when we started to talk about how this would work, we literally had some of our client partners coming in who owned just the emails. So no, that's not how we would approach it. Or someone who would be concerned about, just the advertising part of it, or the internal existing customer account system, and they all had various different things to say about it, and it was so difficult to get to a place where we could all agree on what this experience should be doing, and we were learned consequently that aligning and integrating is even a bigger imperative in the context of an ecosystem, because an ecosystem is contextual. An ecosystem is something that is distributed, and it's not as simple as a 1-2 relationship. So we're back to this idea of, all right, we thought we were in a good place, we were getting to the strategy that everyone agreed upon, we're setting things forth, and we ended up with something, everyone jumped on the personalization bandwagon. As soon as we had big buy-in from our top executives, because they really believed that this is going to do something, we're just laying the ground for it now. Everyone wanted a piece of it. They all were jumping on it and saying, we're going to personalize this way over here, and then we're going to personalize this way over here. And it was actually, it was hilarious. But the big lesson is, this is hard. But really, true alignment and integration demands a shift in the business objectives for it to work, as well as in the culture. And I don't have all the answers for that now, except I know that it's something we have to solve for. So what are some of the things you can do here? Understand existing performance goals and strategic objectives by channel, because they're usually different and often competing. And express opportunities through scenarios. I think what's one thing that sold our CMO on the idea of personalization is when I actually got up and acted out a scenario where how the retail center could connect to the website with these RFID cards, and he was so excited that someone else walked in the room and he said, "Oh, can you show that again? Can you do that again, please?" And I think that's by bringing these to life in ways that people can truly understand how people are not only behaving but what the value is very important. And it's also about building a long-term roadmap, because we thought we would be where we are now in the first 3 months. And of course, that never happens. But you want to start small, move wisely, and choose how you're going to build something like this out. And more important, appoint an ecosystem, or as I would just say, a strategy ambassador. Find someone who's just going to take on that role and be able to connect with all of the groups that are involved, all the stakeholders who might be having a play into this big attempt to change the business. And then finally, last one, optimizing and growing the experience. We think we design it, we get support, we start to build it, but then what happens? I actually woke up in the middle of the night about a month ago when we were at a place where we were starting to get a new CMS system built and a brand new data infrastructure that would support the kind of experience that we were trying to build. And I realized, oh my God, I have to be there. It was sort of like one of those like last minute, I forgot to study for the exam dreams, and I should have been there for the last 3 months, and suddenly, where was I? So came back to the team and I said, you guys, we have to figure out what this means. How does all the back end stuff really truly work? We had an idea. We had third-party vendors that were going to come in, and I had this fear that it would end up like something in Minority Report, where we walked into these wonderful experiences that meant nothing, and instead we tried to break this down, and if you were to describe personalization to a 5-year-old, I'm just going through this very quickly, it's very simple. Someone goes to a channel and encounters an interface. We learn something about them, which gives them, feeds data into the CMS, which feeds content back to wherever they are based on what they do. They have an individual profile, which is fed back into the personalization engine, which feeds more content out. Then there's also a tracking engine that feeds back into the rules. And it's much more complicated than that. But you get the idea that there are a lot of things involved and a lot of people on either end. There are people who are determining what's working, what correlations can we make, what content do we need, and what should we display. And none of these people are necessarily working with the same objective in mind. And so that's when I had the realization, you know what? So much of the experience, so much of what is there is a result of many, many wizards behind the curtain. And we need to stay connected to those to be able to shape the experience. It's becoming, I think, an essential part of the way we work, and a lot of us do it anyway, but as we think of ecosystems and as experiences grow in a way that are as interconnected as what we're trying to do at least, the data infrastructure grows bigger. And whatever you put in place now, I believe, is going to determine the experience of tomorrow. So, case in point, we had a big summit where we got everyone together to describe the next phase of implementation for this big project, and everyone was on board and very excited, and no one had any problems until the next week, the next time we met, or actually during this meeting, I said, don't you think we should go back to our original strategy? I just want to make sure that everyone understands why we're doing this and what the value is. Because we're so deep in the woods with all these details that are we still in touch with that? Are we still in touch with the value of providing support? We had sort of like 4 experience pillars. It was persuade, because we had to do that. It was engage, and it was support, and then learn. And people were saying, no, we've seen it. And I said, but there are new people who just joined the account last week. I mean, do they know? And oh yeah, we walked them through it. It was fine. And so then we met again the next week. We had 2 guys, which we were calling the optimizers, because they were the guys like the third one on the last slide that I showed you, and they were the ones to develop a plan to optimize what was working or what was or wasn't working. And the minute they showed their plan, it was like, oh no, that's exactly what we didn't want to do. It's exactly the way we didn't want it to work. We don't want it to be simply about marketing messages and how they're getting it out. It's about what we're listening to and what we're allowing the customers to tell us. So that's when I realized it's so important to think beyond the customer experience layer when we're thinking about ecosystems as well. And it doesn't mean we have to make those plans, but it means that we should ask what will be needed to support the ecosystem. We should collaborate with business in building an operational plan for execution. We did get the buy-in, and we're having to reshape new teams, how IT works, how the culture and the people collaborate within the company. It's still underway, but it's required big change, and people have realized this to make this happen. And again, appoint an ambassador. I can't stress that even more. And then, and I would even suggest, we haven't done that yet, is design a marketing plan around it. We've done things in the past at RGA like vision videos or journey videos that can be passed around, but those seem like they're seen 1 minute and forgotten the next. But if there's a way to infuse the culture and all these people who are working on a larger business transformation with the central precepts of what this is supposed to be doing, and constantly being able to remind them what this is for, I think is very important. So if I were to look at this now, what I've just described to you is a sort of roadmap if I were starting this from the beginning, because we didn't know this. You've got to break the barriers, get people to think about the ecosystem, new ways of getting out of their silos, create a case for change, and build a plan for keeping it on course. Those are the 3 big things that is required to do something like this. And finally, I think we have an opportunity. Through our attention and focus on ecosystem as a foundation of a cross-channel experience, I think that UX professionals, and I said this earlier, can demonstrate a new kind of strategic leadership. It's about design, it's about technology, but it's also about thinking of experiences in a much broader capacity. And I think some of those can be you. And, and it could be a new role for experienced teams. Whether you want it or not is another question, but I find it pretty exciting and pretty interesting to think of things this way. So I hope that if you should encounter anything like this, that you'll have a path for moving forward more smoothly. Thanks.
Thank you very, very much. And you mentioned ambassadors twice. What's an ambassador if it's so really, really important?
What's an ambassador?
What's an ambassador? What is an ambassador?
Ooh, is this a trick question?
No, it's just, you mentioned it twice. It's really, really important, but I'm curious, how would you define it?
An ambassador is someone who actually is charged with sounding the the horn of the core value and strategy for what we're all doing. It's almost maybe it's not an ambassador. Maybe it's like a preacher. Or something like that, but really, it seems important that there's that voice that's constantly reminding people, and plays a role of socializing the core strategies across multiple teams and stakeholders.
Yeah, nice, got it.